Let's talk about Israel, because this is all about Israel. I just want to take this moment, Dr. Rod. What's happening?
Oh, look, I think it's impossible to ask a question like that. I mean, we know what's happened very recently, of course. Hamas terrorists murdered a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
And they're holding some hostage now. And they did it in the most barbaric, inhumane way. It must be condemned as strongly as we can possibly condemn it. It was evil personified. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It wasn't an act of war. It probably even goes beyond terrorism. It was an act of absolute barbarism, and I think it needs to be called out for what it is. I mean, I've seen some of those images, and I've still got images on my mind that have been there now since October the 8th, when I saw the footage of the absolutely despicable things that were done. It's almost impossible to even imagine a human being so evil as to do the kinds of things that were done to civilians, babies. Look, I've never seen anything like it, and I doubt that most people have seen anything like it in their lifetimes. It was absolutely satanic, and I'm amazed that world leaders have been as really, most world leaders are now lecturing Israel about the rules of warfare. That is an absolute disgrace, and it's a blight on us all.
So why? Like that's what I don't understand. Why is there this so anti-Israel? Like, why is everyone against them?
Well, it's almost true to say that everyone's against them. It's not quite true, but it's almost true.
Yeah.
Look, they've had 2,000 years of persecution. It goes a long, long way back in history, perhaps even further than that, that the Jews have always found it very hard to exist as a nation, even as a community. And it's an absolute disgrace that world leaders are trying to lecture Israel about conducting warfare within the rules. I saw a pompous BBC journalist interviewing a former Israeli prime minister, and she made me feel sick. She was just so bad. She didn't even raise the issue of babies being beheaded, and she just wanted to talk about, why have you cut off the water and the electricity? Well, I think she was a bit of an idiot, quite frankly, because Israel has only ever supplied about 6% of the power and water into the Gaza Strip. Come on, all these people are complaining about things like that. They absolutely have no factual knowledge.
Yeah.
And, people talking about a two-state solution. Guess what? That was tried. The United Nations passed a motion, I think it was the 29th of November in 1947, that created two states, Israel and Palestine. I don't think they gave them those names at the time, but they created two states, one for Israel, the Jews, and one for the Palestinian Arabs.
Yeah.
Right? Literally before the ink had dried on that United Nations decision, 5 Arab nations invaded Israel, and it's been going on ever since.
Yeah. And so, actually, I will mention this. I didn't put this link below, but I will. I believe Ben Shapiro, I don't know if you've seen that video.
I've seen a lot of Ben's videos.
Did,
yes.
Where he just sat down and explained the history, and he had a map.
He's done a good job. Yes.
Incredible job. Obviously, him being a Jew himself has a lot of emotion and a lot of investment in this, and obviously he knows the history of it very intimately. So I'll put that link below because I think he explains it so well. So
he's done a very, very good job. He's done a very good job.
So I couldn't do it justice explaining it. But It was interesting. I was speaking to one of my friends at the gym. He's an Iranian Jew. And so I was talking to him about it, and he goes, "I'm not sleeping at the moment. I'm just up watching this," and he's so affected. And I asked him, like, "How do you find this? Because you're Jewish so he's Jewish by heritage only. He's
Right,
not,
yeah, yeah.
not by religion at all, but just by heritage. But being an Iranian, which is one side of it, and then being a Jew, which is the other side of it. How are you conflicted?" And he just says, and I'll be honest, he's not the most moral person or anything like that. He doesn't have the most ethical lifestyle choices or anything like that. Like he's definitely not far from being religious or anything like that. It was really interesting that he said, "I normally," like, he goes, "my Jewish heritage isn't really, he's not anything. He doesn't go to tabernacle. He goes, "I'm not, whatever." But he said his heart bleeds and he feels this pain and a connection with his Jewish people because of this, and he feels no connection to Iran because obviously they're financially funding Hamas, and they're supporting that in that way and providing them weapons and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a very difficult situation about all of this drama that's going on. And I find it really interesting that there's, like you say, there was this vicious attack, just inexplainable. Like, it was just horrific, the things that Hamas did. And yet still everyone is like trying to correct Israel and tell them that they're, what they're doing wrong. Like, why is this happening? Why is this happening?
Look, it's happening in part because people are incredibly ignorant. They don't read history. They don't even try to understand what's going on in this part of the world. They don't understand, for example, that the Jews have been pushed out of all of the Arab countries surrounding Israel, and yet there are, I think it's 21% of the population of Israel it's Arabs, right? So Israel is fine, absolutely fine about Arabs living in Israel. They can vote, they can have political parties, and I do believe they've also got some representatives in the Knesset. Why is that? Because Israel is a democracy. So they have the same democratic freedoms in Israel as Israeli Jews do themselves. But you won't find Jews in the Arab countries because they've all been pushed out.
Yeah.
A lot of the people who are trying to lecture Israel, they wouldn't even be aware of that. They just wouldn't be aware of that. I mean, there are lots of people who are insinuating that Israel should get out of Gaza. Well, what kind of idiots would say that?
Yeah.
Israel got out of Gaza in 2005. They moved all of the Jews out. They basically forced any Jews who were living in the Gaza Strip to get out. They rehoused them in Israel. They handed over government. All the military left. In 2006, Hezbollah was elected as the government there, and ever since then they've been lobbing missiles into Israel. You know, give me a break. If you're going to lecture somebody, you see, and this is one of the things that it really makes me very angry, because we're lecturing Israel left, right, and centre. Like this British journalist, she read out, from the law on war what Israel isn't allowed to do, but she said nothing at all about how Hamas was actually also breaking international law on warfare because of where they locate their missile launches. They always locate their missile launches close to a mosque, a school, or a hospital. I've seen the maps. There's hundreds of missile launches located within about 100 metres of a mosque or of a school or of a hospital. You know what? That's illegal.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about that. There's no balance, and I think it's not so much because of prejudice, or I think there's plenty of that. It's sheer ignorance because people are too lazy to go and do some research on their own and find out what the real situation is. Now, as you probably have guessed, I have done my research And I am very sympathetic to Israel. I do believe that they have the right to exist as a people, as an ethnic group, and also as a nation. And as I said, we tried the two-state solution. That was the United Nations decision in 1947, and 5 Arab countries immediately invaded Israel, and the attitudes have not changed. The general belief is that Israel should not exist, and if Israel were ever to lay down her arms, Israel would cease to exist. Now, that's the issue that confronts us. We can be absolutely, we talked about risk a little earlier, the risk is 100% that if Israel ever lays down its arms, it will be wiped off the map, because that's the objective of Hamas and Hezbollah and a lot of Arabs. I'm not saying all Arabs, but a lot of Arabs want to see Israel disappear from the face of the earth. That's the reality.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to. I remember Ben Shapiro was talking about the fact that, well, how do you go into a negotiation with someone that their number one rule is eliminate Israel?
Yes,
that's their number one rule. So.
Look, Israel has given away land, and all that ends up happening is they become places to base rocket launchers from which rockets are launched into Israel.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands of rockets have been launched into Israel over the past decades. I mean, it's a common occurrence, quite a common occurrence.
Yeah.
And the world just stands by and lectures Israel. It's just the most hypocritical thing you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, our hearts go out to the Israelites. Our prayers with them. And I know it's so peace in the Middle East, it's just such a saying, but are we ever going to see it? Or is this just destined to happen?
Well, we'll see it in eternity for sure. We'll see it in eternity. But I think a reading of the Bible makes it fairly plain that the Jews are going to do it pretty tough. But I don't think God has ever rescinded his covenant with Abraham. I don't, and that of course is one of the reasons why the Jews, the religious Jews at least, still stand strong.
Yeah.
Because of their unshakable belief in the covenant that God made with Abraham. And I know there are a lot of Christians who believe in replacement theology, that it's the Christian church, which has actually replaced Israel, so that in a sense now the Christian church is the chosen people rather than Israel. But that really requires what I would call extra biblical revelation. You won't find any evidence, I don't believe, in the Bible itself to suggest that God has turned his back on Israel.
Yeah.
Clearly, my desire, and I believe God's heart, is for Jews to accept Jesus as the Messiah for whom they've been looking and continue to look for. But that certainly doesn't give me any reason or excuse to turn my back on Israel, because they are still God's chosen people. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And I think something that the international negotiators and government leaders and so on just ought to reflect on is how important it is, whether or not they believe the Bible, whether or not they're Christians, they need to understand how important it is that God gave the promised land to Israel. And that's something we could talk about at length. But God gave, and as far as I know, they're the only nation that God ever established and that God gave land to.
Yeah.
I think as Christians we need to reflect on that. Yeah,
that's really good. I just want to kind of lean this back now to leadership, because I think that there's actually a really good lesson in leadership. That we're saying that Israel have been under attack for millennia, right? And they will continue to be under attack until Jesus returns. How do they do it? Well, they're standing firm on their faith. They're keeping hope alive that God has given them a promise that they are gonna be delivered, and so they're staying true to that promise. We as leaders are going to be under attack at times. It may not be from literal missiles, but we're going to be under attack. How do we handle that? We keep our faith alive. We keep our hope alive. Now, if you're a Christian leader, then you keep your faith alive that God wants the best for you. God has called you to this. God has laid out a path for you. And even with challenges, even with attacks and onslaughts, God will bring you through this. And so it's important for us as leaders to keep our hope and faith alive. If you're not a Christian leader, that's okay. Still have hope. Still have faith that, look, you will get through this. You will get through this. And that's one of the things that you will be under attack as a leader. But you got to keep your hope and faith alive to keep pushing you through. It is a lot easier to do it when you have faith in the Creator God, that He is in control of all things and that He is sovereign. Hey, you just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership Podcast. If you like that, hit the like button and put a comment below. Hey, if you want to watch more videos like this, check out our channel. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe.